Hello and welcome to our very important lecture today about toxins. Today we're going to talk about toxins. What are toxins? Greek philosophers from back in the day, they had a very special and a very interesting definition of what is a toxin, what is a poison. And interestingly enough, it holds true up to this day. And the name of the philosopher, his name was Paracelsus. So Paracelsus, interestingly, said that a poison is anything that is taken in excessive amounts. So, what differentiates poison from remedy is the dosage. So, water, for example, who would think that water could be poison? If you drink too much water, then that would lead to hypervolemia, and that would dilute your blood and disrupt the isoosmolar balance, the state of U osmolarity, the homeostasis for the osmolarity of your blood will be disturbed by drinking too much water. So that's an example of taking too much of anything. Excessive dosage of anything is a perfect example of a poison and a toxin. So today we're gonna have very interesting objectives, and these are: what is a poison? What is a toxin? A toxin is anything that is poisonous. Toxicology is the study of the causes and the structures of poisons. How do they make their way into our bodies? And once these poisons are into our bodies, in toxicology we learn how do they get distributed throughout our bodily tissues, and then how do these poisons get metabolized in our bodies, and how do they get excreted, and how do these poisons have a mechanism of action that leads to a target poisonous effect. So there are three main routes. There are three main routes through which a poison or a toxin can make its way to the body. The first route is air, through inhalation. So you take a deep breath and you get air into your lungs. So these are the lungs. So from the air into the lungs, you start inhaling asbestos, you start inhaling some dangerous pollutant, and that pollutant, once it enters your body, becomes a form of an exogenous stressful toxic poisonous agent known as xenobiotic. XEXENO biotic. So biotic means lively, in the body. Xeno means strange, doesn't belong there. That's why they say autograft is when they take, for example, a patient has a burn, they take skin segment from somewhere else in their own body and then attach it to their burn site. That's an example of autograft, from your own self to your own self. I burn my right arm, then they take a piece of somewhere in my body of my skin and attach it to where I was burned. So from my own body to somewhere else in my own body, that is known as autograft. Allograft is when I have a donation of a kidney or a skin segment that comes from a donor who's within my species. So I get a heart transplant from another human being like me. That's an example of a allograft. I get a kidney transplant from another human being. That's an example of an allograft. I get a kidney transplant or a lung transplant from another human being. That's a perfect example of a allograft. Autograft is from me to me within my own body. Everything is happening within my own body. Take from one place, put it into another place. Take from your checking account into your savings account. Still your own account. So from your own body to your own body, that is autograft. Allograft is from somewhere else who is still your own species. So another human being giving you an organ. Xenograft, xenograft, that is when another species. So we have seen cases where there are pig heart transplants and baboon heart transplants. So that's a different species. So that is definitely not autograft. That is definitely not allograft. That is an example of a xenograft. So xeno is foreigner, agent, different, doesn't belong there. Biotic meaning in the body. So a xenobiotic is a chemical substance that made its way into our lively body, but it doesn't belong there. Your own body doesn't make it. It entered into your body and now it is part of the lively tissue. That is a xenobiotic. So your body doesn't make it. Same thing with antibiotics. Antibiotics are made by bacteria. So we take them into our body. They don't belong there, but they still operate within our body. So they become part of our body, and we use them to fend off and fight any potential microbial bacterial infection. And a xenobiotic, that's not an antibiotic, that is now a foreigner, usually toxin, usually poisonous, that made its way. So we talked about the first route of entry. The first route of entry is air. So you see these, so this first demonstration here, that shows you air. You see the breeze, and then you take a deep breath into your lung, and now this asbestos, or you inhale cigarette smoke, or some smoke enters through your oral or nasal cavity, makes its way to your lungs. Another route of entry is ingestion. When you drink water, polluted water, when you drink water, or when you eat some food that is contaminated, that's another route of entry, is your gastrointestinal system. So you drink water, and then the water makes its way into the GIT. So that is our gastrointestinal tract. So now we drank water that made its way into our stomach, then the small intestine, then the large intestine, then it got absorbed as the arrow points, it got absorbed into our body. So now it entered through our gastrointestinal tract. So we talked about the first route of entry, air and the lungs. The second route of entry is rather water and food ingestion. The last part of the routes of entry is the skin. So, for example, in the soil, you laying down or you touch on the soil, and there is some form of a parasite or some form of poisonous, toxic material that touches your skin from the soil, from the surrounding. So now, from the soil to your skin. So this here shows you your skin. That's the hair follicle, and that's your skin. This upper layer of the skin is known as the epidermis. This top layer is known as the epidermis. And then the second layer below it is known as the dermis. And the last yellow fat. This is fat tissue. This is fat, subcutaneous fat tissue known as the hypodermis. So what happens is you get the xenobiotic or the toxin that penetrates through our skin and makes its way. You see, these are blood vessels. There are many blood vessels that are in the deeper layer where there's connective tissue that provides. The skin needs to be nourished with oxygen. The skin needs to be nourished with oxygen and nutrients and needs blood supply and removal of metabolic waste, and therefore it's highly vascularized. So this xenobiotic now is going to escape and enter the blood vessels and make its way to our body. So then we talked about the three different routes: either inhalation through the lung, inhalation through the lungs, or ingestion, drinking the water, ingestion, so inhalation through the lung, or drinking the water through the GIT, and lastly, some form of a toxin in the skin that is goes into the GIT. Okay, and lastly, you have this this GIT is going to be the terminal distributor. It's going to absorb all of the xenobiotic and distribute it into the blood circulation. In the blood circulation, let's see now, what are we going to see within the blood circulation. So in the blood circulation, we see that we see in the blood circulation the xenobiotic passed, and now it's going to be distributed through the circulatory system. So this is we're going into the circulatory system. So this circulatory system is going to disseminate and distribute the toxin all over the body. So now the toxin that was outside in the air, that was outside in the soil, that was in the contaminated water or the food, now has been distributed through all of our body in the circulatory system. Then once it's in the body, then how does your body respond? How does your body metabolize and get rid of this? How does your body metabolize and get rid of this toxin before it destroys the body? How does it do that? So, okay. So now, what is the next step? The next step here is there is a system that leads to the successful metabolism of there's a system that leads to the successful metabolism of this xenobiotic that made its way into the circulatory system. So now we are at this stage. So if we look here, we have already left the stage. We have already left the stage of um, the toxin making its way to the circulatory system. Now, what's the stage that comes after the circulatory system? The stage that comes after the circulatory system, it's actually the circulatory system is going to distribute the poison into the tissue, all the bodily tissues. That's why bone tissue utilizes a lot of blood, and therefore the poison is going to leak with the blood, and there's going to be a lot of poison that's going to deposit in the bone, a lot of poison that's going to deposit in the fat tissue, the lipid tissue. So you see, our tissues are going to the same way they receive blood and oxygen supply and nutrients, they're going to be receiving the poison as well. So the distribution to the tissues is going to ultimately lead to the toxicity. So the tissues are going to be poisoned and suffering from this poison. Or the, as we said, the tissues are going to store this poison. We said the poison is going to deposit in the lipid tissue and in the bone tissue and in the liver and all of the soft tissue and visceral tissue, visceral or soft tissue as well. Okay, then the liver has a special enzyme known as the microsomal microsomal P450 cytochrome enzymes. So the microsomal cytochrome P450 enzymes. These enzymes are going to metabolize the toxin. So now we need to metabolize this toxin. We metabolize the toxin based on two phases, phase one and phase two. Phase one, the toxin, all the toxin enter the body in the form of lipid soluble, not water soluble. So toxins and xenobiotics always dissolve in detergents and lipids. They are non-polar. So in order to get rid of them, your kidney using this microsomal P450. If you're worried about the name, just remember cytochrome P450. This system of liver P450 enzymes is going to take this nonpolar xenobiotic, this nonpolar poison, and it's going to oxidize it, reduce it, and hydrolyze it, and convert it from lipid soluble enzyme, lipid soluble, I'm sorry, not lipid soluble enzyme, from lipid soluble poison or lipid soluble xenobiotic into water soluble polar xenobiotic or polar poison. Now, once it's polar, it can dissolve in water, and it can dissolve in water. That means it can dissolve in blood. We can urinate it. That's what we want to get it out of the way. But if we do not convert it from lipid into water soluble, it's going to stay in our body forever. So we want to get it out. So we have to change it. So if you have the dollar, you can use the dollar in the US. But if you travel to another country, you got to change the currency. So here, this xenobiotic is non-polar. If you want to get it to the urinary system, you want to pee it out, you want to remove it, excrete it in the waste, you have to convert it into water soluble because that's the only way we can get things out of the body. So phase one needs chemical processes, oxidation, Leo says GER, lose electron oxidation, and gain electron reduction, hydrolysis, and dehydration also in activities in phase one. Now we're going to activate. This is called activation phase. We're going to activate the xenobiotic by making it polar. So the next phase then is we're going to perform something known as conjugation. Conjugation is the next stage where we add glucuronic acid and glutathione, and we're going to add the bile that is stored in the gallbladder, and now we're going to get rid of it, the gallbladder, and now the poison is going to leave our body, and then we're going to excrete it. So this is what metabolism is. Metabolism is phase one and phase two, thanks to the help of the microsomal P450 cytochrome liver enzymes. These guys are going to first, phase one, they're going to activate the poison, and with oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, and converting it from lipid soluble into polar and water soluble. And in phase two, we're going to have conjugation. We're going to add glucuronic acid, glutathione, and we're going to add the bile. And then that's how we're going to be able to metabolize this xenobiotic this poison so we can execrate it and get it out of the body. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video. Okay.